Welcome to Rooted and Rising Healing. I'm your host, Hali, and this space is for women rebuilding after betrayal. Here we make sense of what happened, find truth again, and reconnect with who you really are beyond the pain. Whether you're staying, leaving, or still in the middle, your story matters. Together, we'll explore truth, clarity, and the quiet courage it takes to rise from the wreckage of what was into the wholeness of who you're becoming. You're safe to be here. In the messy middle, in the rebuilding, and in the rising. Let's begin. Welcome back to Rooted and Rising After Betrayal. This is a space for women healing from the inside out after betrayal in their primary relationship. In our last episode, we talked about how trauma lives in the body and how your nervous system has been working really hard to protect you. I hope this week that you've been practicing paying attention to what your body is trying to tell you, viewing your body as a friend and not as an enemy, and really starting to learn what the language of your body is. Today, we're going to talk about another piece of healing, and that is your truth. Because betrayal doesn't just shatter trust in others, it can also fracture trust in yourself. You might start to question your memories, your intuition, your perception of reality. And I want you to know that's not weakness, that's trauma. So today is about reclaiming your truth, the one that your body's been holding on to all along, even when your mind is struggling to make sense of it. So when betrayal happens, confusion becomes part of the trauma. So you might hear things like, you're overreacting, or that's not really what happened, or you're too sensitive, or if your partner is being somewhat truthful, they might tell you that they've told you everything, and then a couple of days later or weeks later, they might tell you that there's more. And so that can really shake your foundation of knowing what truth and reality is. And so when that gaslighting or that manipulation happens, it doesn't just hurt emotionally, which it does, but that's not all it does. It also disrupts your ability to trust your own reality. And there's something really important to understand. And we talked a little bit about this last week. And that's the hippocampus in your brain. It's the part of your brain that's responsible for making sense of sorting out your memories, making sense of your story. And right now, your hippocampus is working on overtime. It might be reviewing the past. It might be replaying conversations or moments or conversations, trying desperately to figure out what's real and what isn't, and what's real now, what was real then. So that's not you stuck in the past. That's your brain trying to restore safety and clarity from something that has quite possibly shattered your reality. So this is why your thoughts may loop endlessly. And it's not because you're broken. It's because your nervous system is trying to rebuild the story of your life. So today we're going to talk about some ways to start doing that for yourself. Early in healing, I see a couple of things that happen. Sometimes people don't want to talk to anybody about what's happened because there's a lot of shame and pain around it. And so they don't want anybody to know. So they might isolate, or they might try to continue on carrying on with life and family and church and work and all of those things with a mask on, or with this fake front that everything's okay when it actually isn't. I also see the opposite end of the spectrum happen, where some people want to tell everybody, sometimes out of revenge or anger or pain. And they might tell everybody. They might tell family and friends and coworkers and everybody around. So everybody now knows this is actually part of your brain's doing what it needs to do to try and organize the traumatic memories. Your brain wants to convince anybody else of your reality. And so speaking it sometimes feels really good in the moment. And so speaking the truth to yourself can be really a compassionate thing to do, acknowledging that this has happened and the pain is real and it's intense and that I didn't actually deserve this. Simple, honest acknowledgement and grounding. Every time you name your reality, you anchor yourself back into yourself. And that's where healing begins. So I want to give you a couple of practical tools to start identifying your truth. One of those is to create sort of an external brain for a reality anchoring journal. So you may or may not know this, or may not have experienced this, but trauma can sometimes scramble your short-term memory. So one of the most powerful things that you can do is get the truth out of your head and onto paper. So this external brain or reality anchoring journal, it doesn't need to be anything fancy. You can get a notebook or a tablet or a note on your phone where you write down facts. What was actually said or done, as close to the facts as you can remember them as soon as they happen, so that you're anchoring that truth into your brain. How your body felt in that moment. Was there tightness? Was there calm? Was there confusion? Was there clarity? Any inconsistencies you notice over time. So if you're anchoring this into your external brain, so meaning you're getting it out of your head and onto paper where you can actually see it with your logical brain, you're going to be able to start noticing and recognizing patterns or inconsistencies over time. And this is not about you trying to build a legal case. This is about you trying to create a reality anchor, something solid to return to when doubt creeps in or when patterns of manipulation or gaslighting start to show up. So when you can start to anchor this in it, that will start to help you identify those patterns of manipulation that are happening. So there's the first thing I want you to consider adopting or incorporating is getting yourself an external brain, a reality anchor journal. The next thing is, and this builds on our episode from last week, is start to tuning into your body's red flags. So when someone else is manipulating or gaslighting you, your nervous system often senses that something's off or that something's not right before your mind can even explain it. So do you feel a tightening in your chest when they start to talk? Is there a sinking feeling in your stomach? A foggy, frozen sensation afterward? Do you feel stuck? Often these signs are your intuition, and it's picking up on something that's unsafe or untrue. And your body is not lying to you. It's alerting you. So start paying attention to that. Continue to build on what we talked about last week. And then separate facts versus feelings, okay? It can help to separate what actually happened or what was actually said from the way it made you feel, okay? So if you don't actually know what time he got home, but he said he got home at 6, and you felt unsettled because it didn't match what your body was sensing, you can hold on to that truth. You can hold on to what your body is telling you until you can prove otherwise. You get to trust yourself. You have the right to trust yourself, even if you don't have all of the facts. Even if someone else's narrative isn't matching what your body's telling you, you get to hold the evidence and the impact of that. We're going to talk about a personal Bill of Rights statement here in a couple of episodes, but one of those things is that you have a right to trust your intuition. And you also have a right to be wrong. So if you trust your gut and it turns out that there was more of a trauma response happening, it's okay. You still have the right to trust your gut until you have evidence otherwise. So as you start to do these things, you're going to start to identify manipulation tactics early on. So I want to talk about some red flags of manipulation and gaslighting. Some forms of manipulation are deflecting responsibility. If they try to minimize it and say, well, you're just being paranoid, or it wasn't that big of a deal. Those are two: deflecting responsibility and minimizing your pain, where the impact of their choices are two red flags to be aware of. If they try to rewrite the story, rewrite the history, that never happened, or I never said that, but you know, because you saw it with your eyes or you heard it with your ears that it did, that's a red flag. If they start to turn it on you like you're the problem, well, if you had just been more affectionate, I wouldn't have needed to find it somewhere else. If you hadn't made me upset, I wouldn't have needed to turn to the pornography. So if they start to turn it around or blame shift or make it you are the problem, that's a red flag. They're not willing to take accountability for it, that's a red flag. So when you see this show up, if you do, I want you to remind yourself that someone denying my reality doesn't make it untrue. They don't have to agree with what I know to be true for my reality to be true. Anchor yourself into that. You may not be able to control their words, but you can control the internal agreement that you have with yourself. So the next thing to think about is sharing selectively, protecting what's sacred. Brene Brown I've heard her say once that the number of people that have earned the right to know your story should fit on the smallest size sticky pad, like the 2x2 one. So that's not a lot of people that have earned the right to know your story. Now, I would want to be very clear on this. I'm not saying that you should isolate. There is a difference between isolating and sharing your story with people that haven't earned the right to know it. So isolation is not helpful either. We need to find trusted, safe people that we can share our truth and our story with, because your truth is powerful, but not everyone deserves to hold it. Okay. So I've seen this go both ways. I've seen people who early on want to shut down and isolate and not tell anybody. And that's a really painful place to be. You need somebody safe that can listen to your story. So safe people are those who can listen without minimizing, without shaming, or without pressuring you. Some people might have strong opinions or strong ideas about what they think you should do. And you are the only one that gets to decide what's right for you. You are the only one that gets to decide what your next step is. So if you share with someone and they start to instantly tell you what you need to do, then you might need to back up a little bit. Maybe they only get to know a little bit of your story. Unsafe people are those who gossip or judge or try to tell you what to do. And so sometimes early in the pain of flooding, I've seen where people tell everyone. They tell family, they tell coworkers, they tell friends. And later, if they decide to stay in a relationship, they tend to carry a lot of shame about how public their story became because they were telling everyone. So I would just caution you to maybe think about Brene Brown's recommendation that the number of people that have earned the right to know your story should fit on the smallest sticky pad. Now, sometimes your safe circle might not be within the people that you think they should be. Maybe your mom or your sister or your best friend turns out not to be one of those people who can hold space for your story without shaming or pressuring you or trying to tell you what to do. And if that's the case, then you might need to expand your circle a little bit. Find a wise coach or a therapist or a support group or a trusted friend who can hold that space for you. Because your story deserves protection, not exposure. And not from a place of shame, but because not everybody's earned the right to know the truth of your story. So I would just caution you on that. I'm not telling you to isolate and to keep it to yourself, but I also don't want you to tell people that you might regret telling later. So the next tool to think about is a grounding truth statement. So writing down what your body's telling you. My body is telling me the truth, even if my mind is still having a hard time sorting it out. Or their denial does not erase my reality. Repeat that to yourself. I can hold what's true for me without needing them to agree or to accept or to support me. I can protect my story while I heal. So there's just a few ideas of affirmations or grounding truth statements that you can start to remind yourself of over and over again. The way we talk to ourselves is the way that we create our reality. So if we start to talk to ourselves like we trust ourselves, that's a great way to start building that trust. But if we reinforce the idea that we don't know anything about our reality or that we can't trust ourselves, we'll stay stuck in that place a little bit longer. So start with the small things. I trust myself to know what I just saw. I trust myself to know what I heard. And then even you might want to start trusting yourself to do the things that are going to help me in my recovery. I'm going to trust myself to get out of bed today. I'm going to trust myself to eat something healthy today. I'm going to trust myself to make that phone call to a coach or a therapist. I'm going to trust myself to get out my journal and start writing. So start with the little small things of starting to rebuild your trust again. Early on in the betrayal trauma journey, it can feel like you're standing in the middle of a storm without a shelter and everything keeps coming at you from every direction and the wind is intense and you're getting hit by things. But think about anchoring inside of yourself. And anchoring yourself into that truth is a great place to start. Waiting for what you can name and then protecting it. Every time you write it down, every time you trust your body, every time you speak it carefully to someone safe, you're building your anchor a little bit stronger into your own safety. So if you also start to feel shame, sometimes betrayal leaves this residue of shame. And this is like these cruel internal whispers that sometimes say, I should have seen it coming. If I were different, this wouldn't have happened. Or maybe this was my fault. Or what does it say about me that I'm staying for now with someone who did this to me? But I want you to know that shame lies. Shame keeps you small and silent and disconnected. And shame is the most isolating and most painful part of a healing journey. So self-honoring sounds something different. It sounds like, you know what? I did the best I could with the knowledge and the information that I had at the time. I'm not responsible for someone else's choices. How would I have known the truth if they're so good at manipulating, so good at covering up the truth, so good at minimizing? Another self-honoring phrase is, my experience is real and worthy of being named. You can't heal what you're still blaming yourself for. So naming the truth is really an act of deep self-honoring. So I hope that I've given you a few ideas to start with knowing and owning your own truth. And it might feel like you don't know the whole truth, and that's okay. Start small. Start anchoring what you can see today as the truth of your reality. Start affirming that to yourself. Start honoring what you know. And sometimes the words you fear the most are the exact doorway to freedom. So here's what I want you to remember from today. The truth doesn't harm you. Hiding it does. Your body already knows what's happened, and your heart already knows what's real. Now, let your voice join them together. Choose carefully who gets to hold your story, and trust deeply within yourself that you own your truth, and that's enough. Remember, each time you speak it, gently, honestly, and bravely, you reclaim a piece of yourself. So until next time, take a breath, root into what's real, and remember that you're not broken. You're remembering who you are. You're rooting in your own truth, and you're rising. Can't wait to see you next week. Thank you for being here with me inside Rooted and Rising Healing. Remember, healing isn't a destination. It's a returning to your truth, to your voice, to the woman you were always meant to be. You have the power to rise at your own pace, in your own way. And when it feels hard, just come back to your breath and remind yourself, still I rise. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love if you shared it with another sister on the journey. And until next time, stay rooted, stay rising. You've got this.